Hello, bonjour, and welcome to your new Bonheur Private Wines video. Today we're continuing our little tour du monde, our quick tour all around the world of wine with all of the essential vocabulary that you need to have in mind to start navigating and understanding the world of wine with ease. Last week we looked into a few of the most famous grape names that you see on wine labels, and today we're going to be focusing on the most iconic and famous classic wine regions, again from all around the world. Some of those names that you see also on wine labels, but you may be wondering what they are all about. This is essentially a list of the very interesting wines that you may want to consider exploring and tasting for the quality of their wines. Let's go. My fellow wine-loving friends, Julian here. Before we get started with the video, there is something that you have to know about. This video was made possible by the Bonheur Private Wine Partnership, and the reason I work with them is not just because it's been called the most unique wine club in America, but because they truly love the wines that they choose for you. Founded by Will Bonheur, the partnership is a small group of wine lovers who have come together to import excellent small batch wines that might otherwise get completely overlooked by large importers. They get them. Right now you can get your hands on 3 rare extreme altitude red wines from Argentina, from some of the purest, highest vineyards in the entire world, way up in the Andes Mountains. No middlemen, no additive packed supermarket wines here, no inflated costs. Plus you'll get exclusive access to more wine education videos from me, just like the one you're about to watch, to make sure you become an educated wine connoisseur. So make sure to check out the link in the video description to see if you want to become partner in something truly special in the world of wine. But for now, back to your video. Here I'm going to assume that you know the basics of your American wine geography, the Napa Valley, the Sonoma Valley, the Sonoma County, the Santa Barbara, the Washington, Oregon, Texas, Virginia, Finger Lakes, Long Island perhaps. So I'll pass all of those and focus on those classic wine styles and regions from around the world, starting with France. Of course, we've talked about Bordeaux here, you know about Bordeaux. You also need to know about Burgundy, I'm sure you know. You have to know that we call Burgundy Bourgogne in France, and that's probably what you're going to be seeing on many Burgundy wine labels, Bourgogne. Then of course is Champagne, no need to introduce Champagne. Just know again that in France we do not say champagne, and I personally always say I don't like to have the word pain in champagne, so I personally, maybe it's because I'm French, I personally prefer to call it champagne. Then comes Beaujolais. You had a Beaujolais wine in your club selection, French club selection. Beaujolais wines, relatively light in a bit of a Pinot Noir style, very fruity, very opulent, excellent French wines come from Beaujolais. You've heard about Chablis. It was used, the name was used in the United States for quite a while, so they were associated there with some not so good white wines in California in particular, since the name has been more protected by the French authorities all around the world. Know that Chablis wines, Chablis is a village making some of the greatest Chardonnay wines in Burgundy, such as the villages, the other great villages for Chardonnay in Burgundy that are Meursault and Puligny-Montrachet. In France, of course, you've heard of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Again, you had one of those wines in your selection, Châteauneuf-du-Pape. If you're wondering how to pronounce this, I know it's a tricky one, Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And of course another one that you had in your French wine selection, Saint-Émilion, one of the greatest wines in the Bordeaux area. Finishing for France with Provence. Of course you've heard about Provence, rosé wines, delicious, crisp, dry and rather pale wines from Provence. Moving on to Italy. You all know about Chianti, right? Well, of course, you do not want to say Chianti, but simply Chianti. Great wines from Tuscany, the absolute Italian iconic classic red wine. By now you've all heard about Prosecco. this sparkling wine, the sales of Prosecco around the world have overtaken the ones from Champagne. Of course, they're more affordable, they're simpler wines as well, but they are very enjoyable to celebrate whatever comes up in your life. Of course, you've also heard about Amarone della Valpolicella. If you haven't, and if you like your big, dense, red wines that are spicy, bold and quite tannic, Amarone della Valpolicella wines are made from dried red grapes. So they dry the grapes before making the wine, giving the wines a lot of richness. I've covered those in the Italian wine videos that are made. Fantastic wines from Amarone della Valpolicella. I talked about Barolo and Barbaresco, some of the greatest wines in Italy, coming out of Italy. A lot of collectible wines. A lot of people are absolutely fond of Barolo and Barbaresco wines. Somewhat they are the Burgundy wines, the expensive wines, the fascinating wines. In the Italian version, the ones from Barolo and Barbaresco. You may have heard about Montepulciano. Montepulciano is both a grape variety in some parts of Italy, Montepulciano d'Abruzzo for example, but it's also a town in Tuscany I talked about before that makes the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, which is made from Sangiovese, the same grape as the Chianti. And then finally we'll finish for Italy with Brunello di Montalcino. We talked about it, one of the great wines coming out from Tuscany. If you've been following the videos, you're probably sort of aware by now that the top 3 main producing nations in the world are Italy first, France second and Spain third. So Spain is also a very important country. Those 3 have also been producing the most wines, but also the finest wines for the longest time, hence them having most of the classic wine regions from around the world, hence me focusing on those 3 quite a bit. In Spain, of course, you have to be aware of Rioja. We've talked about it quite a few times, but know also about the Ribera del Duero. There was one wine from the Ribera del Duero. It's not as famous on the international scene, but wines are just as fine as in Rioja. Some of the best wines coming out of Spain. One that you may not be aware of are the wines coming out of Priorat or Priorat. That's more on the Mediterranean coast, made from wines of Grenache and Mourvèdre, so a bit of a richer, more opulent style, a little bit less on the Bordeaux style, more on the Rhône style, the fantastic wines coming out of Priorat. We talked about wines from Cava. They are the Spanish counterparts to Champagne wines. Fantastic value sparkling wines made the same way as Champagne wines in France. Fantastic wines of Cava. If you see a Cava at your local wine shop, have a go at it. They're generally not that expensive and they can be really good. Excellent values most of the time. Of course, you've heard about the wines from Sherry or Jerez in Spain as they call it. The wines from Sherry that can be sweet, some are dry. Fortified wines, a fascinating world. I'm not going to expand too much, but you have to know about the wines from Sherry. And finally, in Spain, let's talk about the wines from the Rías Baixas. Those are super crisp white wines, really fruity, really zingy. If you haven't tried a wine from Rías Baixas, they are called Albarino wines. They can be absolutely superb. But let's continue our tour with a very quick round tour of all the main top wine regions from around the world. Going to Germany, there the top wine region that you have to know is the Mosel. The Mosel is a river, and along the Mosel River they grow some of the best German wines. They are generally dry white wines of fantastic quality, often Riesling. Moving to Portugal, you have to know Port and the Douro Valley. Port is of course a style of fortified, rich, dense red wines, often sweet. The Tonys, the vintage ports, the late bottled vintages, and all those wines are made from higher up in a valley that it's called the Douro. The Douro has also started making dry red wines that are very interesting. Again, fantastic value coming out of the Douro in Portugal. Let's move on to England. Yes, the English produce more and more wines these days, perhaps the global warming. They also have a patch of land that is very similar to the French Champagne, so they do manage to make some fantastic sparkling wines, especially around the Kent and Sussex areas. They are competing with the French, but the qualities are much smaller. It's hard to find them outside of the UK, but do know that they make some fantastic wines. Let's talk briefly about Canada. You may be familiar with some of the great Canadian wine regions as well. Let's mention one here, the Niagara Peninsula. That's in Ontario, around the Niagara Falls. Fantastic ice wines. Between other wine styles, they do make some fantastic ice wines. Then comes Stellenbosch. If there's one region in South Africa you need to pay attention to, that's Stellenbosch, making some fantastic Cabernet Sauvignons, fantastic Pinotage, fantastic Chardonnays, great wine region of Stellenbosch. Barossa is the name that you need to know from Australia. Let's talk about Marlborough and Central Otago in New Zealand. Marlborough for Sauvignon Blanc wines. If you like California Sauvignon Blanc, have a taste at the Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, absolutely superb. Central Otago is a great source for Pinot Noir wines. If you love your Pinot Noir and you're looking for something a little different, Central Otago is the place to look at. Fantastic, really opulent, pungently fruity Pinot Noir from Central Otago. You're probably familiar with Mendoza in Argentina, the biggest wine producing region in Argentina, loads of delicious Malbecs, but let's not forget about Salta. We took you with that video that we made recently about Salta wine regions, high extreme altitude vineyards of Salta, a region that you need to pay attention to, and we're helping you to, of course, regularly here. If we cross the Andes Mountains to Chile, two big names there. There are quite a few others as well, but let's mention two from Chile. The Maipo Valley, this is the main wine producing region. This is very close from Santiago, the capital city of Chile. It is a bit of the Mendoza for Chile. Another one that is fantastic, that is maybe not that famous, only wine connoisseurs do know, because it's a fantastic high potential wine region that is called the Colchagua Valley. And I'll leave it here for today. Next week we'll finish exploring and detailing our essential guide to wine vocabulary as we look into some key wine terms to describe your wines better and understand what the heck wine people like me are talking about when they speak words like terroir, typicity, astringency, etc. All of those words that I use, so you are really armed to understand the world of wine. I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Au revoir.